Okay, good evening. So it took some time to think about all sorts of important issues, and that's why the delay. So I decided to kind of make this series a little bit longer, but of shorter videos, and to watch actually this will be a very short TLDR video with when I outline just my claims without any kind of proof or explanation, because it's kind of important. First to claim something that people will understand. Unless you want to sometimes I portray history or reality in kind of like the methodological way, where it's kind of like in an educational way that I kind of build things that one on top of the other, like in geometrical fashion. So then it kind of makes sense to expose the issues gradually. But right now, I do not say anything new. Like everything that I say now, I claim now already. I've spoken about it in the past, even in the near past. But I understand that some people, didn't have for all sorts of reasons, didn't have or still don't have access to these videos. And some people, just needed to want to have executive summary. But it's not new. There is no there is no kind of need for me to for gradual exposure of my claims. So I will just say what I just speak about very simply about what I think is going on, and then I will create another video with kind of what I've said historical background for the layman that regarding things, the power struggles in Earth after the World War II, and this will again. Probably it will not even be new to people of the intelligence organization of the world that are currently my audience, but it's again it might be useful for any person of the general public that might hear these things, not necessarily now, maybe in the future. And after that, we will return to kind of substantiate and explain the claims that I will now present to you. I should also say that I moved the paintings, the new ones, to the production environments with the fruits and the other stuff. This is the production environment. This is the development environment, and they are separated by this separator. And and it's kind of a way, although it's a magical way for me, symbolic way to protect the door, because I'm always afraid that people will break into my room. And you've seen it in the videos, lately. There's not a day that they don't break the door, and many times, several people also just break into the door even when it was locked, and I had to call the police. So it's kind of it's kind of another kind of a magical or voodoo barrier that people that actually lock the door are kind of they are entering the holy of the holies. They are between the two cherubs. Not that actually I have lettuce, not curve. Here is also curve, like cabbage. I have lettuce now, but the fruits are hanging as usual. In general, these are all very old. Pretty old paintings, more than a year, even a year and a half. But and even the current positioning is not that new. It's a couple of months already. But just a quick reminder. So this is Venus. It's not. I didn't went there, and it's not Atlas grade map, but it's something like that. Approximately. With many islands. This is kind of the main continent, and there are many islands, and these are the spaceships, and this is kind of this is symbolic representation of hyperspace jump. Now, and this is this is a Nero, a spaceship. Nero is both the name of the spaceship and the robots. I know it's complicated, but it was actually initially it was the name of the spaceships, the Nero. The Nero, not the Nero. Nero, this was Nero, the emperor, following the emperor, the Roman emperor. Was the name that I gave to the spaceships. And initially, for quite some time, I thought that I interact with them, that the symbolic language is kind of language between me and the commanders of the spaceships. And it's probably true. It is true, but at the same time, it's also like kind of like a same symbolic language or dialect that is used between me and the robots, the nanobots that I always, speculated about it like for 4 years at least, but starting 10 months ago, I actually watched them under the microscope, and this was, this is the main scientific topic of this channel, as you know. So they are also called Neros. It might be kind of like confusing, but that's the way it is. That's the way I use it. That's my own terminology. And this is the Earth. So you see, the Earth is fried. Venus itself is not fried, but it's like, the להט החרב המתהפכת, like from the Genesis, like the rotating. It's kind of like very ambiguous verse from Genesis, like the rotating sword, like it's kind of like it's there to to keep things like to keep invaders out. So that's the current. This construction is already in place for quite some time, for several months. And that's why you feel the radiation growing. It's not that new. But now we will also have this. The new additions that I will explain. The full metal jacket, the eggs, the pupa, and the bicycle mechanism with the two depiction of the solar system and also the issue for the the radioactive elements. By the way, you can ask. So but here until I put it here, there was not there was no depiction of the solar system in this Holy of the Holy chamber, presumably. So how is it in effect? Maybe there are planets that look like that, like outside the solar system. So the answer is that there actually is depiction in the other side of both of these paintings, and moreover, there were actually more. I have more of these actually, and they were in place before. I just removed it, but but it was actually it was in there. It was in effect. I have more. This in general. This kind of drawing is. The solar system is very common in my paintings. Many times it's in the upper, like in the other side of the canvas, that you cannot see it unless you look on the other side of the paintings. And sometimes it's on it, and sometimes it's in kind of in different kind of small canvases or small kappas. Kappas is kind of it's a material that is used to stretch papers on it or something, also stuff. So you see it a lot. It's not it's not something new. So having said that, so what are the main claims? So the main claims are the following. First of all, the creatures, the foreigners, again, the foreigners that some people think that they are robots. They are foreigners on Earth. This is known. This is not it's actually not that secret because there are quite a bit of those. So they are not robots and they are not dinosaurs, and this is stupid, completely stupid. And as I have described in tremendous length, for many videos and many hours, they are Venusians. I call them Titans. Usually I call them Titans, and it's this term sort of overlaps with the term Venusian, but it's not exactly the same. It should be said it's not exactly the same. Okay? That's why I coined the term Titans, and that's why I mostly do not use the term Venusians. Lately I use it because I want to kind of emphasize that they are from Venus. For those of you that still did not understand, or kind of think that maybe they, I don't know, that they were dug from the ground, or they are kind of, they're dinosaurs, or no, they are not dinosaurs. They are not dug from the ground. They are not they are not terracotta soldiers that found in Israeli excavation and brought back to life. No. That's stupid. That's just stupid. They are sentient creatures, and they are multiplied by sexual relationship between males and females. That almost never happens in Israel because there are no males. In the past, there were actually males, and this was described at length in this channel. but starting the 70s or the 80s, it's almost impossible to find males in Israel. Now they might look like males because they can like be transgenders, like so and that's like more of a philosophical question. It's more like a political issue. But according to my political stand, like for Homo sapiens, transgender female is not female. Like transgender woman is not a woman. And you might, beg to differ. Of course, as expected, I boast, conservative positions on such issues. So it's not kind of like a surprise to you. But I should just say that, just to be clear, you might think like, from like a political point of view or ideological point of view that, transgender Venusians, female to male is male, like is a political point of view. But just as you understand very well, and you do not argue that transgender female can procreate biologically. You're aware of that. If like a male, is like a transition, like almost like sapiens male transition to female. Maybe you from like your own political agenda, you say that this is female, but you do not expect this new female to biologically procreate with Homo sapiens male. So it's the same with the Venusians. Yes, they can look like males, but it doesn't make them males. They cannot procreate. That's why they do not procreate, even though there are quite a bit of those that change their sex to male. And also, it puts them this kind of a transition. Severely kind of like a damages like their body, like more than what this is also true for Homo sapienses, of course. But it's even more true for them than Homo sapienses, because it makes them addicted to some substance. You might argue that it's also true for Homo sapienses, especially if they, it's part of the transition is that they take hormones like testosterone or fergusson or whatever. I don't remember the name, ferguston, whatever it's named. The sexual hormones. Which is almost always the case, and they are also addicted to it. You might argue, but let's not get into it too much, because just what's important. I do not. My intention is not like to now. My intention is not like to force conservative outlook on humans on Earth. I want you to stop being Nazis and to rescue me and my daughters from the Nazi prison. Yeah, you can shove your politics, up your ass, really. Pardon my French. So just so you understand the simple fact, these are not robot shapeshifters. And if they look like men, if the females look like men, it's about the same as female men transgenders that become female in Earth. So yes, they look like female, but they they require also materials to make this kind of they are always they are addicted for life on some substances, and they cannot procreate. Just so you understand it. The reason I call them Titans and not Venusians is quite complicated, and I'll discuss it in the future, but I'll also discuss it in the past. The term does not completely overlap. You understand? For example, like my daughters, for example, they were born in Earth. So what makes them Venusian? So they are not Venusians. So are they cherubs? But it's complicated, because their mother was not a cherub. I'm a different, again, I belong to a different species, a third species that called the cherub, which is far more advanced than both the Venusians and the Homo sapienses. And the spaceships, of course, are the Cherubian. The spaceships are Cherubian spaceships, of course. The Venusians don't have any spaceships, for certain. And the Homo sapiens have I don't know, something funny. Anyway, That's why I call these creatures titans, because it's not entirely true, like to say that they're Venusians. It's more complicated than that. Like, especially when we deal with the population that actually exists on Earth. Now, it's true that, I mean, generally they are not born in Earth. I don't know of anyone that was born in Earth that is not Homo sapiens beside my daughters. But, I mean, maybe there are some, probably not many, because it was part of the agenda of the Israeli society since like more than 100 years, like to prevent it. Like in the book of Exodus, like, I mean, והיה אם תקרא למלחמה ונוסף גמרו על צוננו ועלה מן הארץ. Like, I mean, the fears of the Pharaoh, that, I mean, if they will multiply too much, they will join the enemy, the many enemies of Egypt. So it was like that in Israel, and it's still like that. But it's not that they cannot multiply, it's just that, I mean, there are not that many males, and in general, there is not many males in Venus, and this is a huge problem, and it's mostly because of their own culture. This is a problem since thousands of years, that, I mean, they kill the males, and the females are, sometimes, I mean, they kind of like, I mean, sometimes, I mean, this kind of like, it's like a classic, there's a kind of like classic element in Venusian cultures that, I mean, the several females, like, I mean, they want the same male, so they kill him. It's kind of like, I mean, it's like a poetic subject, I would say, very intricate one and gentle one. I mean, like tragic, but in a beautiful way. I mean, I myself do not find it so beautiful because, I mean, it's the story of my life. I mean, so it's not beautiful at all. It's actually quite ugly. But, I mean, if you do not consider, I mean, if you, I mean, adapt, like, I mean, a very, like, you know, like, I mean, kind of like a lens that is far, far away from the object. I mean, if you look at it like from far, far away, you might find this kind of like, I mean, like dramatic motive or meme, like, I mean, like beautiful in a way that, I mean, yes, that was so beautiful. I mean, and romantic, maybe even romantic, you know, but, you know, in a dark way. But, I mean, be that as it may, I mean, the result of this dramatic, beautiful beauty is that, I mean, the planet is in the gutters for many thousands of years. It's not the only kind of, like, I mean, dramatic meme that where females murder men. Sometimes it happens after they are married, actually. Like, they married, like, then they murder, like, other men. Like, I mean, in kind of, like, I mean, struggle between like petty kings, like, I mean, Kings Arthur's and the royal table. Like, I mean, each male is kind of like King Arthur, and the knights are kind of like, I mean, the females, and they sometimes murder, like, the other king, like, I mean, for all sorts of reasons. I mean, mostly not good reasons. And this is also, I mean, can be like, I mean, again, I don't know, if you look at it as for enough distance, you might think that it's kind of like, I mean, a great subject for, you know, for legendary tales, and, you know, in exotic environments, you know, like all sort of, like, I mean, you know, like, I mean, you know, noble savages, like, I mean, or kind of like, I mean, pure creatures that live a pure life and that are bounded by relation of honor and duty and all sorts of things like that. And it might look, I don't know, it might sound romantic to you or beautiful in a way, but, I mean, it's probably not nice at all if you actually need to live this kind of reality. And this kind of reality I didn't have to live because I was never there in Venus. But, I mean, I'm only, like, I mean, I felt on my own self, like, I mean, the other drama, which is also very beautiful, of, like, I mean, the singles, the group of singles that want the same man, so they murder him. Any case, the other kind of drama is also, I mean, maybe from afar it sounds like very nice and kind of like romantic, but in reality what's happened is that, I mean, the planet is in ruins because of these kind of like very, very poetic, romantic cultural memes, I would say. This is the situation, and this is, I mean, these issues are not related to what humans have done over there. Like, I mean, this is, I mean, as much as I hate the Israelis, I mean, it should be said that this started long before, I mean, you know, long before like any Zionist creep, I mean, like left Europe or was kicked out of Europe and like found a place in the wild west of Palestine. Now, so they don't multiply in years because there are no males. So how can they multiply? Now, as I said many times, both females and males and myself, we like before, like the Titans and myself, we have in our body ring-like entities that I call the Neros. Neros, I call them Neros, and I call them the yellow ones, and the ones of the females have what I call the red ones, and the males I call it brown ones. Just the color code. It's not really their color. Their color varied. According to what they digest. But if they do not, if they are not after a meal, they just look like black rings. And I have hundreds of hours of documentation of them in this channel. It's not like I'm the top secret of something. You can watch hundreds of hours of microscopic examinations of tremendous amount of evidence. Just watch. Whatever. Now, how do I know that they are even different? So this is very, very simple, because mine can multiply without the need of any special thing. When I say special, I mean without the need of robots of other kinds, and without a special food or material, or and that's what happens all my life. They must multiply in my body because sometimes they get out of my body when I pee, or when I ejaculate, when I'm in the sweat. It's even in my sweat. Any kind of bodily fluids that get out of my body contains these robots. And it actually makes sense that it will be that way. When you think about it, logically, any material that is abundant in the human body, almost any organical body, even in the broad sense, even if do not find organism in a very strict narrow term that it's done in earth, but in a more broad term, any kind of organism, I would say in a classical way, because the philosophy of organisms or organic behavior. Sometimes even historical events are described with kind of the adjective organic. So it's much more than it's an umbrella term that describes even in human natural language much more than very narrow definition of carbon-based life forms. So it only makes sense that any material that is abundant inside an organism, even in a metaphorical way, there must be some kind of metabolism involved, which means that some of it decays and get out of the system, and other is born or inserted to the body. From by eating or metaphorically or not. It only makes sense. If it's not like that, then it's probably kind of a material that is alien to the body. Accumulation of all sorts of metals or asbestos inside the human body that is. Every other example that I know of material that you can find inside a body of an organism that does not get out and it does not multiply by itself is always a classic example of toxic intoxication, again asbestos or lead or things like that are not healthy for the body. But if it's something that is healthy for the body, it's always something that it decays and gets out, and also either multiply by itself, like white blood cells, for example, or they require input from by eating or breathing or things like that. So it's obviously true for the robots in my body. Now, regarding the red robot, how do you know that it's not true for the red robots? Because the red robots, it was very obvious to me since the start that the people in Israel, for more than 100 years, and also many people outside of Israel, they value a very, very kind of exotic and bizarre and magical drug that they call the tea, or pee, or coffee, or mostly the tea, they call it the drug. And it's kind of mystery, what's this tea? But since very, very early in this journey, I speculated, and I was sure, and also I never eaten this tea, not even a spoon, and I never certainly never watched it under the microscope. I had tremendous a mountain of evidence that led me very quickly to understand that what they call tea is just the red Neros. It's just the robots of the female body, inside the female body, and that they value the drug very much. for all sorts of reasons. Now, if it was possible to replicate it the same way that it's possible to do it with the yellow ones, and actually the yellow ones can be multiplied and replicated and grow not inside my body, only inside my body, but also in the laboratory environment, and this is the main subject of this channel. I mean, the main, not just, I mean, there's all, like, I mean, not like, I mean, in a relative, like in the relative majority of, I mean, not like absolute majority, but in relative, like, I mean, the subject that is represented the most in this channel by a volume of videos is certainly, without a doubt, the scientific mission that becomes, after several months, like, showed great success, but it's still, there is a ton of things to be done. I mean, it's still ongoing. The mission, like the scientific object of multiplying and growing the yellow Neros outside my body. This is the most important subject of this entire channel. And it was proven without a doubt that it's possible. Of course it's possible. Now, if it was possible to do so with the red Neros, why is this why that he is so, like, such an, like, I mean, like, such an expensive drug and coveted material? Doesn't make sense, right? I mean, if it's safe, so replicate whatever you want. I mean, and just, I mean, and I mean, you know, and just, I mean, you know, pig on it, like, I mean, you know, like, I mean, just, I don't know what, I mean, like, I mean, overdose, like, all of you with that until you die, I mean, and Shalom al Israel, as they say. And sometimes some things like that have, actually were done, like, in the past, but they are not done for several decades now because it's becoming less and less common. We'll speak about it later, maybe, but why, and I spoke about it in the past. Anyway, it cannot replicate by itself, but it can actually. So, I mean, so you can say, I mean, so what happens, I mean, so how does it replicate in the female body of the Titans? So the answer is that it's done by the existence of the brown Neros. These Neros are civilizations, so they also have genders, and they are amazing. They are sentient, and they are incredibly intelligent, and they live many, many years, like, and they know amazing stuff. And they also have males and females, like, I mean, the Titan variation of these creatures, not my variation. And the male Titans have the male Neros. I mean, by definition, I would say. And the female Titans, we have the female robots, and they call them the red one, and I call them the brown ones. And they multiply by being in the presence of each other, and also they require energy and matter. But that's, I mean, generally, that's what they do. That's what they do. So, if the female, like, Titan is not exposed to, and it's mostly done, this kind of exposure is done unless it's in a very pervert way, like it was done in Israel for so long. I spoke about it, but this must be very short. Like, I try to be very short and precise now. So, unless there is a presence of the brown ones in the body of the female, new red robots cannot be created, and the existing one slowly die because of the because of the metabolic principle that I just described. Now, what happened if all of them? Probably they cannot all die. Probably it's kind of like, they have kind of like half-life that that they reduce to very slow numbers. But I would assume that they cannot die all of it. Like, it's not like that. But they gradually, become very, very scarce. And this is actually also the situation for single females that have never had, like, sexual relationship with any male. Mostly they are only have, like, one male, like the husband. They are very loyal, and they are mostly polygamous because there is a huge shortage of males, and it's only getting worse with time. But they are very, very, the ones that are part of a family, and it's part of the issue is that many are not, because it cannot be, because of the issue of the male, the romantic, the romantic cultural, tradition of murdering the males. But when they are part of, like, a family, so they are very loyal. They are loyal even more than, like, the humans. Like, they are part of, like, family. They do not like fuck around or do things like that. this is got it's both for cultural reasons, but it's also because of biological reasons. That I mean, this is extremely it's dangerous. Like I mean, like to fuck around. It's also true for humans, but it's more true for them. And I explained it in the past. I don't want to repeat myself. It's more dangerous for them. But it's kind of from similar reasons, but not exactly. It's not exactly the same reasons, but it's kind of like I mean, metaphorically. I mean, it's similar. Like I mean, and it's something that got to do with infections, and so yes, it's somehow you can compare it to like the human condition, but it's not exactly like that. Like sexual promiscuity in Venus is much more dangerous than it's dangerous in Earth as well, but it's much more dangerous in Venus. Although sometimes it happens, it's not unheard of, but I mean it's more dangerous. That's why they try to avoid it and like to be, I mean, to keep like to the same partners, because it's dangerous even more than like to greater I mean extent than the danger that it poses to humans. It should be said that it's also dangerous for humans. Now, so I mean, like single females that have no husband and have no like sexual relationship, so they also have like very like minimal amount of the red robots in their body. Now they do not depend on it. I mean, they don't need much in order to live. The fact that it helps them in sort of ways, but it's not that they cannot live without it. It's very important to understand it. This is a very important point. They are not like addicted to it. They can be addicted to it, like humans can be addicted to it. Even though it's natural, this substance is natural in their body. Like the presence of this substance in their body is natural to them, unlike the case of humans. They can, like humans, they can also I mean, consume it in too much and then be addicted to it. This can also happen. I don't know how common it is. Probably today it's not very common because I mean there is not much of this stuff in the world at all. Like I mean, it's kind of like I mean there is like less than ever probably. And there are like I mean ton of addicts like I mean that are crazy predators, addicts, mostly in Israel, but also abroad, that I mean, that will literally kill for the stuff. And the dangerous aspect of the situation is that these people are all belong to the intelligence services of the world. So they are, in any case, they are perverts and predators, and they, think of themselves as Superman and all sort of like crazy ideas, and they are fatally, I mean, infected with the global ego pandemic. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not fun. It's pretty disgusting. It's not fun at all, because humans are garbage. Now, let's continue. I try to be very concise and not to repeat myself. Be very, very concise. The fact that many, of the Venusians, were deleted, completely, lost memories because they were subjected to Israeli, brainwash. It's something that probably is not, like, Israelis did not invent anything, so it's probably something that, like most of what the Israelis are doing, almost all of it is kind of like a barbarian variation of what I call the Soviet method. It's clearly something that it was invented. Like I'm subject to the cruelties all my life, and I documented it for so long in so many videos. I spoke like for many hours about what I call the Soviet method, the hypnosis method, and the social terrorism, the state terrorism. Mostly, almost all of it, can be traced very easily to Soviet origin. Almost all of it. It's actually, you don't need to, it's not even secret. There are many public, resources that document the creation of all these kind of psychological method during starting in the 1930s. But my hypothesis is that this actually started even before. My hypothesis is that what I call the Soviet method is actually based on an even earlier method that was started by the intelligence service of the Tsar. That it's actually even of earlier origins, but still Russian. I don't even remember what was the name of the intelligence services of the Tsar, but my policy is they invented like this method, and then KVD later picked up on that, and the KGB of course greatly expanded on that. And for some reason, the people of Israel are, up to this day, that's like 90% of what they do in the Shabbat is the application of this kind of like the Soviet method that is not only unbelievably cool, but also unbelievably backward. But this is, I spoke about it enough, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. But yes, part of this method is like, is kind of like a way, very cool way to make people crazy, and also to delete their personality, like in a very cool way. And this was invented not on Titans, it was invented on humans, human subject, but it was found to be, employed well on Titans as well. So the Israelis are doing that on Titans as well. But they also do it on Arabs, Palestinians, or whoever they want to terrorize. They don't really care. Like, they are not racist kind of like, in the academic understanding of the meaning that, they have kind of a theory of racist that one race is better than the other. They are more akin to, such racism exists in Israel, but, a more true, a more correct, like model of these creatures that they are like animals, they are predatory animals. They do not discriminate too much, they just want to take a bite of like anything that surrounds them. And they have kind of like loyalty to the group, like the same way as like a pack of wolves are loyal to each other, but not more than that. It's mostly just predatory animals that want to take a bite out of everything that is available to them. They don't really care if I'm like a cherub or a titan or a robot or a human or whatever, or E.T. or Alf or Klingon or whatever. They don't really care. They just think this is a piece of meat, what can we get out of it? Can we rape it? Can we eat it? Can we boil it? Can we sell it? That's the way they think. Like that's the way they are. It's like predatory animals. That's what they are. Predatory animals, stupid and like irrational, and the only kind of like a value that they have is loyalty to the group. And even that is not like it's mostly like enforced by violence, like by violence of the group itself. But it's not like high ideal or something like that. Like if another group would like predators will like theoretically will kidnap them and release them from their association from the previous group, and will ask them to become members of the new group, they will do it without a thought, without a blink of an eye. They don't care about Israel like as a concept in itself or something like that. Just a random group of predatory animals. So they found that this kind of method was applied to the Titans, so that's why many Titans are, they are kind of, they lost some of their memory, but not all of it. I don't know what you have in, only you can say, what kind of your personality is still left. I can say that there is not a day in my life that the people of Israel don't try to implode this on me day and night in all sorts of ways. That's the kind of the holy grail is that maybe after 40 years, at last, some kind of like creep would, successfully employ the method on me, and I will be deleted, because they need me like as a body, but they don't want me to speak or to or to think. They want me like to be a slave and to like and so they have the fantasy that I will become their slave, and this can presumably be done by deleting my memory. But up until now that doesn't work. But it doesn't. The fact that they tried for 40 years every day, all day, doesn't discourage them from continuing to try it because reasons. Because they're insane. Anyway, it should be known that part of this Soviet method is not just to implant the triggers on the subjects, so there will be it will be possible to delete their memory or their personality, but also to put all sorts of conditions on them. For all sorts of reasons, ridiculous, more or less ridiculous. And these conditions might, most certainly, some of it stays like on wherever was subject to these scenes. Like so people abroad that that are Titans, and if they they know that they are conditioned, they feel that they are conditioned like in all sorts of, I mean, ridiculous ways against all sorts of things, like, I mean, and they don't understand why. So as I said in the past, most certainly it's got nothing to do with your supposedly nature or background as Titan, and most certainly this is remnants of brainwashing that was done by the Israelis, which is sad, but I mean, you know, it's part of the fun of, like, you know, the experience of 20th century, like in Earth, like, I mean, you know, totalitarianism and, you know, state terrorism and brainwashing. It's like, I mean, humans like to do it in it. It's kind of like, I mean, you know, the special kind of, like, I mean, flavor of life in the 20th century in Earth, and it's very, it was very common in the 20th century and in many places in Earth, like, I mean, so like millions of people, actually humans, like not Titans, humans are actually subjected to the same kind of, like, fun stuff. I mean, yes, humans like to do it. Like, I mean, in the 20th century, it's you know, every time every era, I mean, they have their own, like, I mean, it's like a fashion. Like, I mean, you know, what's the current fashion of torture? So I mean, so it was a very, you know, a la mode, you know, as they say in the 20th century. Like, I mean, to mess like with the, like, the brainwashing, like, to all sorts of things that are related to brainwashing. Should be said that, I mean, even the supposedly democratic and freedom fighting societies of like the Anglo-Saxon countries like Canada and the United States and England, I mean, even them, I mean, they were very interested in things like that during the 1950s. But I mean, presumably they stopped. I don't know if it's, I don't know. Hopefully they really stopped. But I mean, probably they I mean, according to the common thought, I mean, they kind of lost interest in that during the 70s, and I hopefully this is true, because it's all cool and stupid and insane and barbarian, and I mean, and even the Russians, I mean, should be said that, I mean, the Soviet method just is employed much more by the Shabak, like, I mean, than whatever, like, the KGB is called today. It's not called the KGB, it's like a different name in Russia, but they use it substantially less than the Israelis. Like, I mean, the Israelis are now, like, I mean, you know, the torchbearers of the Soviet method. Why? I don't know. Because I mean, I do know, because they're stupid and disgusting, and they have too much, like, human power and not real enemies for a long time. Even though they do the best they can to invent enemies, because I mean, all the classic enemies are just disappearing, and they find themselves in a very difficult position that, I mean, that there is no one else to fight. But I mean, fighting is the essence of this culture since so long ago. So they keep, you know, doing whatever they can. Like, I mean, they maintain, like, I mean, they do everything they can, like, to maintain a completely fantastic, I mean, and like, I mean, conflict that no one really understands, like, what's actually is got to do with real life with the Iranians. But they do whatever they can to maintain this conflict, like, I mean, for decades, mostly because, I mean, there are no other people, like, to hate and to fight with. So they need someone to, I mean, to justify the fact that, I mean, so many people in this country are part of the intelligence systems and part of the security system. That, I mean, that is kind of like it's Sparta. It's Sparta. What can you say more than that? It is Sparta. And they need enemies, and I mean, the problem is that since the 1980s, I mean, all their enemies disappear, and they don't know what to do, and so they find themselves in a very hard position of people that like to live on the sword, and I mean, that's the only thing that they know how to do. But I mean, there is no more enemies, so they invented the Iranian, like, I mean, this actually, I mean, it's the Iranians they also like this. I mean, they are part of the show for similar reasons, because they also have, like, huge security sector that, I mean, and tons of generals that, I mean, that like in the past they had wars with Iraq and things like that, but now they know, I mean, they also lost many of their enemies, and they don't know what to do, so they kind of, it's kind of like a mirror image in Iran as well. But I mean, no one really knows what are fighting, like, what's the issue at all. I mean, these countries do not share border. They don't, in the past they were close friends, like, for many, many years, and they don't, I mean, and they don't, like, have any, no one really knows, I mean, what's it's all about, and probably most people cannot even tell you I mean, but it's very clear that both of these countries, they don't know what to do, because they lost their enemies, and they need excuse for, like, all these kind of, like, I mean, like, the war machines that are, but in Israel it's much worse than Iran, actually. And it's not a completely, like, mirror image. In Israel it's much, much worse. Now, and another thing the Israelis are doing is completely inflating in unbelievably, unbelievably stupid and absurd and ridiculous way, like inflating the severity of the conflict with the Palestinians. Like, to a point that people abroad, they know that there's an everlasting problem in the Middle East, and no one can actually ever solve this issue because presumably it lies on kind of historical, animosity, like it's historical, hatred between Muslims and Jews, and also for things that are completely untrue. All of this is completely untrue. Even people that are pretty young, like myself, I'm not even 40, or I'll be 40 very soon. Remember the time that it was actually different. The whole issue of, this is the Palestinian Authority is the size of a very, very, very small farm in Texas. It's nothing. It's not really an issue at all. If people wanted it was solved long ago, the Israelis do not want it to be solved at all, because they need the war machine. They need this kind of always to be always security speaking, always speaking about security, always dealing with security issues, always being very serious, and the society that is controlled by very serious males that mostly were ex-generals, and they're all very serious, and they all know special stuff, and they're part of the shushu, and they know they know stuff that you don't know, and because of them, you are still, you can still feel secure, even though you never feel secure because you live in a totalitarian state. So this is a huge show that they do whatever they can to keep alive, even though in reality it's all of it, most of it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous and unbelievably small, tiny, like microscopic. The Palestinian Authority is microscopic, and the Israel itself is microscopic. Everything is so small and stupid. And really, you don't need to be an alien, with such sizes of countries like myself, to say that this is microscopic. You just need to be humans, Homo sapiens, with the eye open, with open eyes, to see that these are microscopic creatures. And the reason why it's still kind of an everlasting international conflict that is always on the news is very simple. The Israelis wanted to be that way because starting the 1980s, they found themselves in a very, very troublesome position of they don't have their enemies, and they depend on the existence of enemies, because the whole society is based on military issues, military superiority upon all other aspects of life. During the 1980s, the Israelis came to conflict with the Arabs more than ever. This conflict was there throughout the whole 20th century, but it became much more severe than ever, and it was more than ever. As I said, it's the Arabs continued with the radiation, and this is something that actually. The cyclical radiation events was something that was going on for decades, and the Israelis had all sorts of ways to deal with that. And this happens all around the world. It's not limited to Israel, but it hurts mostly those that eat the drug, the tea. But so it became too much for the Israelis, and so they nuked Venus. It wasn't very big nuke, but it wasn't nice. It's unusual. You should know. You were pretty new in the interplanetary scene, or interstellar scene. So as a representative of a race that has been around for quite a bit longer than you are, I need to tell you something. It is not considered very nice to nuke another planet. It's mostly considered not nice, even very not nice. Just so you know, if you didn't know, so now you know. Why they did it? Because they're insane, and they're predatory animals, and they are addicted to wars, and that's the way they are. They're stupid. And it was like that always. It was already like that in during the early 80s. It's not something new. They're predatory animals. Yeah, so it wasn't. It was considered like a very unnice thing to do to nuclear another planet, and so as a result, the Cherub decided. Usually they don't do anything against Israel, and this is also true today. Just so you know, as you know, some people say that it's like a classical stand like among international politics, especially in the Arab world. It was never actually true, but it kind of like, it's a cliche to say that we do not recognize in the existence of Israel. אנחנו לא מכירים בקיומה של ישראל. It's kind of like, something that Arab politicians, traditionally, they almost never say it today, but it was very common to say it like until like maybe 10 or 15 years ago. It's changed very recently because of all sorts of things, but no, it's not really important. But it's kind of like a traditional say to say we do not recognize in the existence of Israel. It's kind of funny because in Hebrew, it's even more funny. Like, what does it even mean? We do not acknowledge that it exists. But it's like, but it's there. What does it even mean? So it's fun. It's fun. What does it mean that you don't? You can say that you hate them. It's totally legit to hate this. They are Nazi predators. I hate them as well. But to say that you do not recognize, acknowledge its existence. So, but the traditional stand of the Cherubs, like my own species, is something like that. Like there is Arab politician. They do not, acknowledge the fact that Israel exists. That they refuse to acknowledge the fact that the state of Israel exists. That's the traditional political positions of the Cherubs, of my own species. Personally, I find it difficult, to adapt to stand because I was born Israeli and all my life I was Israeli and I'm still Israeli. But yes, that's they don't. They refuse to acknowledge the fact that Israel exists, and they would not speak to you about Israel at all. They refuse to speak about to be part of conversation where the word Israel is uttered, or even in a metaphorical way. There is any kind of a speech with regards to the entity that is called as Israel, or even about the existence of such an entity. They don't know what it is. It's too small. Mainly, they prefer to speak about Earth, and very seldom they will speak about they will go to they will kind of force themselves to deal with entities in higher resolution. Mostly the maximum resolution is Earth. But yes, this radiation, this is like a traditional weapon, but not the only one, is, in effect, it hurts Israel the most because it hurts population. It hurts people that have the robots in their body, and this is not true only for Israel, but it's, in Israel, they have there are more people relatively more people that ate this thing, and they ate more, on average more than others. So, in effect, it hurts Israel much more than other states. Yes. Anyway, they decided that these monkeys do not require atomic weapons, and that there should not be atomic weapons in Earth, and just as a just to make sure that they don't build new ones, they also decided that it's a good idea to delete to destroy the mines, like the radioactive material mines, uranium and plutonium specifically. How can they do it? They can do a lot of things. They are very advanced. Now, at some point, Israel started to be an exporter to other countries. First of all, should we say the following, and I will elaborate on it on the next video, but just, as a very short, TLDR. First of all, there were always much less nuclear weapons in this world than what was claimed. Much less. Even though it was always too many, but the numbers were always much smaller than people claimed. It was never like many thousands of warheads, numbers that were very commonly claimed in the height of the Cold War. It wasn't like that. And it should be said that, it's, maybe I'll elaborate on the next video, but because it's very important specifically to our own, discussion. But just in one sentence, I would say that much more than other weapons, nuclear warheads are kind of like a headache to maintain. This is true for any ammunition, any kind of ammunition. Requires some kind of maintenance. And so it's one of the things that your military bodies are doing. But it's much more difficult. It's a real headache with nuclear warheads, because there is also things that should be considered. And they are and relatively quickly. Not in a day, but at some point they should be scrapped, and they should be scrapped, and so this is an issue. So there were always not that many, at any given point it wasn't the many thousands that was claimed by the various the superpowers. And also it should be said that the Vanunu affair is a complete charade. It's just theater show. Israel never had 400 warheads. Never. It's just it's complete bullshit. All the other every other aspect of the Vanunu affair. It's just a show. It's just a theater show of the Mossad. Everything about it is a theater show. Complete lie from beginning to an end. But yes, they had nuclear warheads. Yes, not 400, not even close. It's a really headache to maintain these weapons. And mostly since the 1980s, people don't have many. They have very few. Very few. The Israelis have some, but and the Americans have some, but they don't have many. It's very rare. It's like a rarity in air since the 1980s. And even before that, there weren't that many as claimed. But after that, it's drastically reduced. But there is also another issue, which is the navies, specifically aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines, like the Trident submarines, like the UK Trident submarines and other submarines, and nuclear power plants. And in general, it should be said that the usage of all of this is much lower than what is actually claimed by the government. The people don't really have the real information. In reality, the usage of first of all, people, since long ago, it wasn't always like that, but since long ago, maybe I'll elaborate in the next video, but mostly the only people that actually use carriers, like aircraft carriers, is for a long time is the United States. The rest, the Chinese have one, and you don't really know if it's operational, and the Russians have one, and it's never working, and in the past, it wasn't like that. Even before World War II, the Japanese had many. But let's speak about it in a different video. It's already a very long video, and I just want to put my claims and then elaborate later on it. But so, in actuality, in reality, nuclear engines that require radioactive material, or simply nuclear engines, are used very rarely in Earth, mostly by the United States, rarely if ever by other nations, since the 1980s. And even the usage in the United States is much smaller than what can be perceived. There is a kind of a mythos of 11 aircraft carriers that, I mean, all each, like, I mean, you know, like, I mean, is kind of full of, like, you know, radioactive material because they have, like, these nuclear drives that drive them, and, you know, they have, like, the nuclear groups, like, I mean, the aircraft groups, like, I mean, the carrier groups with submarine and, you know, and cruisers or whatever, and some of them presumably are also nuclear, I don't even remember. And kind of like they dominate the seas, and kind of like, I mean, you know, the juggernaut out of diplomacy. In reality, it's far from true, because they're never really, I mean, they are not in sea, like they are always on port. Like mostly there is like 2 of these that are actually on, like they're actually like somewhere, or only 1. And they try to minimize, like, I mean, the kind of like, I mean, their maneuvering. And naturally so, why should they do it? It's super expensive. And others don't have, like, since the 1980s, just don't have these things. Like, I mean, they don't have it at all. Or just, I mean, yeah, again, the Russians have like 1 that never in use, and the Chinese have, like, you know, the Chengdu or something like that, the 17 one, a bit 17. That's a number, like, that is written on it for some reason. I don't know why. It's not that it's like, I mean, serially number 17. It's the only thing that they have, and they also don't use it because it's super expensive. And also it's difficult to get radioactive material, but you can still get it. You can still get radioactive material in Earth. Now, mostly, surprisingly, Israel became exporter of this stuff, and this is curiosity. What do you know? Those little scumbags that, I mean, traditionally don't, like, manufacture anything, and famously the land, they own a little piece of shitty land that is mostly desert and contains nothing, not even like a bit of an oil, and like, I mean, in contrast to other, like, I mean, like desert Middle Eastern nations that are also, I mean, desert, but they still, I mean, at least they got oil. So in Israel they don't even have oil, they have nothing. Like, I mean, only, as I say, Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, a land of milk and honey, nothing more than that. Like, I mean, so what do you know? They started to be exporters of the stuff. Wow, amazing. So how can you explain it? You can say either they found like I mean, you know, radioactive mine in Israel, or they found a radioactive mine in Venus, because presumably they still can use the gate. They have more than one actually. So maybe they can mine it in Venus. But both are wrong. Both are wrong. What they actually do, even if they don't understand it, I mean, they do understand it, but not completely. I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, it's, and the understanding of the situation, even in Israel, is very different, I mean, between people. Like, I mean, it's not the kind of, I mean, it's kind of like a secret that, I mean, many people know only very, like, small parts of the secret and don't really understand what's going on, and certainly abroad, like, I mean, it's kind of like a whole curiosity, but, I mean, what's actually happening is the following. They use the red Neros and also the yellow, and because at some point they discovered my existence, and they discovered that I have very, I mean, that like a different kind of tea that has many amazing properties, and I elaborated in the past what properties, because this is not only related to energy, but I want to limit myself to the issue of energy now. And my existence, I mean, is and like, I mean, the role that I take inside kind of like the foreigner drama in Israel, or the foreigner tragedy in Israel, is not only related to energy at all. I mean, that's why I didn't speak of I almost never spoke about energy. It's, from my perspective, it's kind of like, I mean, it's just, I mean, another subject, because there are many other subjects, I mean, and so just to say, it's not that it's not that I was discovered, like, I mean, you know, the source of energy, but also the source of energy, or, I mean, a component in their kind of like, I mean, energy economy. But the importance is much like larger than that. That's why they torture me like to such an unimaginable extent, because there is a very kind of like, I mean, again, it's a traditional, it's a classic kind of like, I mean, theme or motive, like in the Jewish societies, especially those that lived on Israel, like in their homeland, that, I mean, it's kind of like they have very strong and, like, I mean, respect tradition of that, I mean, that they need to torture and abuse the most, like, the people that they need, that are most, like, important for them and most valuable for them, and do them the best, like, I mean, favor. I know it sounds paradoxical, but I mean, you need to live in Israel for enough time to understand the internal logic of it. Because yes, I mean, it might sound that I mean, for people that I mean are not really aware of like the Israeli culture and like specifically, and also I mean the history of the Jews in Israel and like the very I mean special like I mean ceremonies and kind of like I mean and rituals that they developed I mean throughout many thousands of years. For like people that are not aware of that, it might sound very peculiar. Like I mean that like as a society they do everything they can to torture. I mean specifically those that do them the most good. But I mean I can tell you that I mean you need to I mean don't judge this too harshly or too quickly. Just I implore you. I mean I really ask you. I mean just be patient before you, I mean you judge the Israelis for this kind of like I mean or the Jews in Israel for this behavior. You need like to learn about the very specific history and you know to know the people and you know their local traditions and the local like I mean you know like you know and the special belief system and they have like I mean very intricate law like the halakha, the Torah and it's very ancient one, so it's very respected one and yes I mean when you live like in this land long enough and you know the people and you learn the history and the tradition and the religion and so after sometimes it's kind of I mean it's maybe no it still doesn't make sense but I mean you no it still doesn't make sense but I mean you learn to accept it as kind of a fact of life and that's the way it is with Jews specifically in Israel. It's very peculiar kind of like a tradition but they are all completely like I mean into it like I mean they are all of them like 1% of them are I mean like I mean you know comply with the demands of the tradition, specifically the tradition that I mean that dictates that the most valuable person that are doing the most like benefits should be tortured to the largest extent. I mean you know that's what they say. I mean, you know, it's a phenomenon of, you know, multiculturalism. You know, it's there are all sorts of cultures in Neros, you know, so and all sorts of like traditions. And what can you say? I mean, these are the people. So they discovered that they can use these robots or whatever they call it. In all sorts of ways. Specifically, they discover that they can create material from it. They can create gold, and they do it sometimes. And they can also create radioactive material. And they can create synthetic isotopes of this radioactive material that were actually not known before, or certainly not common before that. And some of it is actually characterized by very short half-life, because sometimes radioactive material elements, I mean, they have like tremendously longer half-life, but other isotopes have a very short one. So the Israelis in general prefer the shorter ones because they don't like to sell it like for other nations. Like I mean, so they create atomic bombs from it. Because mostly, I mean, the Israelis, I mean, they like they kind of like prefer a world with as few as possible atomic weapons, and this kind of makes sense actually. But of course, I mean, they always like I mean. At the same time, they maintain that they should, I mean, have at least the ability to create atomic weapons. I mean, at least some of it makes sense, if not all of it. I mean, you must be, I mean, admittedly so. They didn't really like I mean, they like the new status quo. Like I mean, that the world is kind of like empty, if not entirely empty, but that there are very few atomic weapons in the world. Partly because they are and always have been a rogue state and crazy state, and they have like they are psychotic like society with many like you know delusional like I mean you know ideas of grandiosity that they are so great, you know, and they don't look at the map and see that they are like I mean microbial, and that they are parasites and that they don't manufacture anything in Israel and they depend on other nations for everything. They don't do everything besides war and speech, war and noise. But they're delusional and they always have been. So they thought to themselves, and yes, it somehow makes sense that maybe a world without nuclear weapons, or at least not many, could be like a convenient world especially for a very small nation that depends on other nations and also like to shit in their faces all the time, as the Israelis like to do. So they saw that this new situation can be beneficial for them, especially since they do not plan to ever stop shitting in other people's face, and they know that and they have no kind of inclination to change their parasitic form. It was always in the agenda. It still is to keep being parasitic state and no one in Israel even think to change the economy so it will be actually manufacture anything. To the contrary, they always try to remove, to delete and annihilate any kind of remnant of manufacturing that existed in the past in Israel. So all the remnants of actual productive work is ferociously deleted by the society. And they do everything they can to sell every kind of productive endeavor for to abroad, because it's more than ever it's in their agenda that they should they should live as masters of the universe, and slave traders and slave owners, and that the only respected profession is either in the security sector or in politics, and the low life, the bottom classes of Jews in Israel that they are not qualified enough to serve, to work in the professions of security or politics. So they need to settle for other jobs like lawyers or brokers or real estate agents. That's it. God forbid they will actually do something that produces something to someone. This is completely out of the question. It was never on the table. And again, they ferociously fight any remnant of of very limited productive a society that somehow existed in Israel. Starting in the 1950s, but almost all of it was deleted, because the ideal is that there will be two classes, the upper class, which is like warriors and politicians, and the lower class that need to settle on jobs like lawyers and real estate agents and brokers and things generally professions that that are at best case they have they contribute zero to society, and at the more common case they actually they negatively affect GDP and certainly HDI, but these people need to do something, so whatever. So for such a society, and at the same time they really like to shit on other nations' faces, and they're doing it all the time, and they don't mean to stop. So such a society, you can understand that kind of the idea that other nations would not have nuclear weapons and that they will not be common, because it's aligned very well with their with their agenda. But they still wanted to sell the stuff, the radioactive material. So it's much better to have a shorter half-life isotopes, because they can be used by the navies and they can be used by nuclear power plants. But it's not wise, even though it's still been done. But it's really unwise to actually build atomic weapons from these kind of isotopes, because first of all, it will require a lot of maintenance, and these kind of weapons require a ton of maintenance, and it wasn't that it was anyway, it was done much less than what was claimed. But with kind of unstable isotopes, it's even much more headache and dangerous, and mostly the people that actually bought the stuff are those that actually needed it for their energy purposes. It should be said that even them was actually depend on it much less than what they claim. Like, according to the claim, French, they are like, I mean, they had the record holder in the usage of atomic energy. Like, I mean, 70% presumably of the energy that they produce is from like atomic nuclear reactors, and they will sell energy like to other states. In Germany, which is adjacent, have zero, or almost zero, I mean, nuclear reactors. Presumably as a result of the Chernobyl event, but this is of course bullshit. It's not because of the Chernobyl events. They started to eliminate all the nuclear costs because they had quite a bit before 1980s. And they even shut down, like, it should be said that any power plant is kind of like, I mean, it's built with a due date. With any kind of power plant, not only nuclear, I mean, any kind of power plant, all types, all of them. I mean, for several reasons that are completely out of the scope of this video, power plants are built with, with specific, like, initial duration, which is mostly 20 or 30 years. And by then, when this area is over, then there is usually, this is almost always like that in all sort of like energy. Like, I speak about like big ones, like utility ones, but there are also like, I mean, like minor kind of like power plants or generators. Or experimental, but let's put it aside. Like, when we deal with the utility scale, like as the name of this series, like the utility scale, like, I mean, the big power plants, all of them. So when they are built, they have like the initial period, which is usually between 20 and 30 years. And when this like area, I mean, when this time like duration is like reaches its end, so there is like a general inspection, like general inspection of the whole power plant, of all the components. And usually, almost always, like it's the standard I'm seeing that happens is that I mean, it's kind of it's they get approval, like engineering approval, that they now can, I mean, prolong their life, like with additional 20 or 30 years, mostly with kind of like, you know, remarks, like, I mean, things that should be specific, like, I mean, things that should be like, you know, like a component should be like, I mean, you know, that should be replaced with new ones, or like, you know, like more, I mean, and sometimes, I mean, there are new regulations that, I mean, because, I mean, after 20, 30 years, I mean, you know, the regulatory bodies, I mean, the regulation change. So, I mean, so now, usually, I mean, they need to comply with like new kind of regulations that are now in effect. So they need to do some kind of like refurbishment to the facility. And then they have the engineering approval for another 20 or 30 years. And then they must, like, I mean, shut down. But sometimes after the time, like, another completely new one is built where the previous one existed. So from like the public perception, it's kind of like, I mean, continuously, like power plant that continuously like was in operation for more than 50 years or 60 years. This can be possible, but after the 50 years mark or 60 year marks, it's a standard that, I mean, to build everything, if they choose to if they still, I mean, if the society or the nation still wishes, like, I mean, to have the power plant, like, I mean, of that kind in this position, like, I mean, so they just build everything. And this is true not for only for nuclear power plants, it's true for every utility scale power plant. That's the way it is. Like, I mean, these like facilities, incredibly important facilities, they are not, like, I mean, they are not made to last more than 50, 60 years. And after the time, if you still want like to have you know, power plant in the same place, you just rebuild almost everything. I mean, not everything ever. I mean, maybe you don't need to rebuild, you know, the kitchen, or like, I mean, the toilets where the stuff is, like, I mean, taking the shit or something. Yeah, I mean, so not everything, but I mean, every you know, every important, like, I mean, every important part of, like, I mean, of the power plant is replaced, like, I mean, like, completely replaced after 50 or 60 years. So in Germany, during the 1980s, they decided to stop the operation of nuclear power plants, even those that were still before their due date, even some that were still before their, like, I mean, their first due date, which is very uncommon in the energy sector. Like, it's something that's it's incredibly rare. mostly governments wants, well, like whatever we did with like nuclear power plants or any kind of power plants, mostly governments try to, to lengthen like the lifespan of power plants. Naturally, because they don't want to build new ones, or like, and even to postpone the refurbishment that is done after 20 or 30 years, because it costs money. So why should you do it? So they try to postpone. Like, this is like that everywhere in the world. Like, it's not Israeli thing. It's just like that. But in Germany, they decided to do something that is very peculiar, and to not like give any new permission to new nuclear power plants to build, and not to like give like the engineering approval for like to double like the initial time spent of existing nuclear power plants, and also some were shut down even before like the due date, which is very, very uncommon, very, very uncommon. Like, it almost never happens like in the world, because electricity demands are always going up. Like, there is, it never goes down. Like, it always goes up, up, up. So you always need more energy. So from like the point of view of government, it doesn't make sense like to shut down like a power plant before its due date, or not to do everything they can to lengthen like its lifespan, because there is no like a scenario that they will not need electricity. They will most certainly require. It's not like there is less demand, so we don't need the supply. The supply is always needed. Like, every kind of every supply that you have is always needed by with regard to the electricity market. It's a market that everything that is manufactured is always bought. It's not like kept on the shelf. It's not like there like electricity, like fruits that are kept on the shelf and no one buys them. It's impossible. It's always, whatever you produce is always bought. So it was very unique situation actually in Germany. Presumably because there was a very strong Green Party, and it actually existed before the Chernobyl event, but presumably after the Chernobyl event, the Green Party became very, very strong, and they held an amazing campaign against the atrocity of the nuclear reactors, and the danger that they pose to humans, and so the whole Germany was swept by these notions. And even after the unification with the Eastern Germany, even the Eastern Germans that even them that didn't really care about those stuff before the unification, quickly became jumped the bandwagon of the green ideology, and all saw that this is unbelievably dangerous. So these devils must be put down so as quickly as possible, and then even in the expense of and the huge expense of very quickly building. Because it's Germany, it's actually possible. If it was Israel, it was impossible to build anything quickly. But in Germany, they actually know how to build stuff. So, and they have tradition to build stuff, to actually do things. So it was actually possible, but very expensive, to build a series of new power plants that are all fossil fueled. So to tremendously increase the pollution. And this was already a concern during the 1980s, and only become larger concern. But they've done it during the 1980s and the 1990s. They very quickly built a series of new fossil fuel power plants, and they suffer pollution. And they do, the famous German stiff upper lip. Oh, the English are presumably are famous for that, but the Germans are actually even have a stiffer upper lip. Of course, it's all a lie. They don't like the idea of buying the stuff from the pirate ship that is called the State of Israel. So they decide not to do it. But even France, they actually use much less than you think. And they buy the stuff from Israel, but it's not 70% of their energy market. It should be said that it's very easy, and I spoke about it in this series, but maybe I'll elaborate on it more. But I've already mentioned it in the series that power plants that were the like utility scale power plants that were I mean, the energy, the actual electrical energy is generated by what I call a traditional power block, which is based on the physical principles of the Lorentz law and the Carnot cycle, and this is true to almost all the electricity in Earth since like more than 100 years ago. Like almost all power plants in this Earth are, belong to the group that I just described. Like they are all like that, almost all like that. There are some exceptions, like like photovoltaic cells, and also there are some exceptions. But I mean, nuclear power plant, like coal power plant, natural gas power plant, even thermosolar power plants. I mean, like the ones that I spoke about in this series. I mean, all they I mean, even hydroelectric. So, the one hydroelectric power plants, it's a little bit more complicated actually. Let's leave it aside for now. But I mean, nuclear, gas, thermoelectric, thermosolar, and coal. I mean, they comprise the vast majority of generation of electricity in Earth since more than 100 years ago, and still like that. And all of these they generate electricity. Like the actual generation of electricity is done in a standardized way, and that it's based on the principle of the Lorentz law and the Carnot cycle, like in thermodynamics. And the only question is like how you actually produce heat. Like you need to burn stuff or use the sun, but mostly you need to burn stuff or use the sun or use heat from your fusion, using atomic reaction, nuclear reaction. But then once you get the heat, I mean, it's straightforward. I mean, you heat steam, you heat water and it becomes steam, and turbine is like rotating, and then you need to condense it back to water, and because you need to recycle the water, and again heat the water, create steam, and that's how it's done. And it's incredibly easy to change how you heat, how you produce heat. It's incredibly easy, it's not something special. That the same power plant will be both nuclear and fossil fueled, or both thermosolar and fossil fueled. It's not something special. It's actually very easy, and it's standardized. It's just adding another block to the facility, and just most it's something changing a lever, like a tap that you need to change between, so now you use the thermosolar, or now you use natural gas, or now you use coal, or now you use nuclear, so when you speak about nuclear reactors, it's a little bit more complicated, because you don't want them to trip, you don't want them to stop completely, because there can be all sorts of unfortunate consequences. But you can certainly change their capacity. You can certainly do it. So it's very easy, and actually that's what is done, to not be completely honest regarding what's the sources of it. What? Regarding, sorry, I just have the phone, fell from my hand. So it's very easy not to be completely honest regarding what's your actual source of energy. Like to say that you're a nuclear power plant, but actually to burn fossil fuel from time to time. In that capacity or the other. And it can potentially also be the other way around, even though there is no country beside Israel that is stupid enough to hide such thing from the public. The other side of the hoax, of the fake. To actually use nuclear energy while you claim that you use fossil fuels is something that is so egregious that that only pirate ship like the state of Israel can actually seek to do such a thing. But mostly it's the other way around. And this is also done in green context. They claim they use green energy, but actually they use fossil fuels more than they claim. It's from technical perspective, it's very, 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 very easy, almost trivial, I would say. But now I will elaborate. This is already a very long video, so I just say one more important claim that you need to know, and I'll elaborate on it on the next video or 2 videos. But you should also know something. When the Israelis sell radioactive isotopes to other to nuclear power plants or to navies, what they actually sell them, even whether they know it or not, is a mixture of at least 2 distinct materials, at least 2. They actually sell them a salad, whether they know it or not, of at least 2 things. First is the isotope that they claim to sell, the thing that actually people, the buyer really want. And also the Neros, the robots that actually created this stuff. Because they created this stuff and the Israelis don't have any way to they cannot, separate this, they don't know how to do it, and they probably cannot do it, completely. Probably there is no, even a way for them to actually completely separate the 2 once they are mixed together. Because the robots, the red Neros, created the material, and they are mixed with it. So it's like a salad, or a puree, or a soup of both, at least two things, maybe more, but at least 2 things. And I don't know if the buyers know that, but that's the way it is. It should be said that, creating atomic weapons from such a material is ridiculously dangerous, and probably is almost never done, though I would not be surprised if it's done from time to time. But it's ridiculously dangerous. This mixture of unstable, synthetic, short half-life radioactive isotope with alien robots from another planet. This mixture is not the thing that you want to create atomic weapons from. And mostly, understand it, and it's not done. But you should not do it. You should absolutely not do it. This is unbelievably dangerous, ridiculously dangerous, and it's not done mostly. Maybe sometimes, humans are crazy, but it's unbelievably dangerous. You do not want to do it. It's like mixing 2 incredibly dangerous material together to kind of like a soup that is super, super dangerous. Now, the beautiful thing about it, now because of the short half-life, it's mostly used by it doesn't need to be stored that much, because they use it, just in the power plant, or in the Navy, mostly by the Americans, almost only by the Americans, and not as I said, not as much as you might think. But it's used, and then they buy new. They don't need to store it for a long time. But because the red Neros in this, since in the last couple of years, all these red Neros are all my family. They are all my sons. They were all generated in the bodies of Venusian females that received they stole, they tortured me and took my semen from my trash after I masturbated, because they tortured me, and so if I had to do it, they really they electrocuted me and unbelievable torture. So I placed this dirty toilet paper outside of my the house so they can take it. But since 2 years ago, I don't do it. I put it all of it under inside sculptures, clay sculptures, or I use it in various experiments and so they are stored in containers, the many containers that I have in this room. But if it's not part of my research, it's put in sculptures. And these sculptures, many of them were intentionally destroyed by myself, because I can't sell it. I'm a slave. I can't sell anything. I'm a slave of this. I'm always under torture. So there is a huge problem with. But we'll speak about it in the next video. Just the basic things that you need to know is the following. the funny stuff, like I mean, as I say about like I mean, the mixture that people abroad buy from Israel for like energy purposes is that it always contains the red Neros, and the red Neros, because of the bicycle mechanism, I can actually manipulate them, which is something that I discovered. I mean, in the last like during the last 10 months, and it's actually very nice because I can do very nice things. I can do things that I haven't thought about, like in the past. Like I mean, the bicycle mechanism is it's much more complicated than what you initially like think. Like I mean, if you just know what you're doing, I mean, you can just trial and error. I mean, yeah, I mean, you might argue that trial and error with such a thing is not that smart when we discuss like nuclear reactor, but I would argue that it's not that smart when you discuss the actual bodies of so many people all around the world, specifically in the ones that are related to intelligence communities. And this is also something that I do for quite a bit. Like I create worms in your bodies, I create germs in your bodies. I mean, and this is documented very well in this channel. And I mean, I don't see an arm or a leg moving towards like Israel to rescue me or my daughters from Nazi prison. So presumably you don't really care about worms, synthetic worms that are created in your own body. I mean, at least not care enough to actually move one leg or an arm to Israel to rescue me from the hell that I live in because of you, because you buy this stuff from the Israelis. Because of that, I am in this terrible prison for so long. Because of that, me and my daughters are subject to unbelievable state terrorism because you buy the stuff from the Israelis, and you do not care about synthetic worms in your own body. At least not enough in order to move arms and legs to Israel to rescue us from this hell. So, is it such a surprise that you don't care about things that are happening inside your nuclear reactors? No, it's not a surprise. No, it's not a surprise. And I mean, indeed, if you are smart enough, not to produce atomic weapons, and most of you, if not all of you, are smart enough not to do it from this material, the only bad things that can happen to you is the following. First, that the little mermaids would be stuck in the middle of the sea. Little Mermaids is how the cherubs called, it's the name that the cherubs called, the H.W. Bush and the Ronald Reagan, the Nimitz class ships. So this is not, okay, whatever. And maybe perhaps more seriously is that the Frenchies mostly will need to watch less television during the night and revert to the whole entertainment of watching the stars, which is a problem, but maybe not a huge problem. And again, you don't care about worms in your own body, so why should you care about the notion of the French keeping having to face the situation of no energy at all. Not enough energy to sustain the demands of the grid. But it's kind of a new thing. A new direction. How can you, a person like me can shout out, "Release me from this Nazi hell! Release me!" And I don't think that it actually will change anything, because again, if worms in your bodies are not enough, then why should you care about the Little Mermaids or about power shut outage in France? Who knows? I don't know. I really I came to the point that I cannot understand humans and how they behave. They are so it's in very sentient species, not sapiens at all, not Homo not sapiens. Now one last claim that should be said, very 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 it's very very important claim. The Israelis actually sell the same dirty soup to the foreigners that live outside of Israel, because presumably they cannot live without it. Their body is destroyed without it. The Titans, the Venusians that live out of Israel, they have to presumably consume, of course smaller amounts, but consume the same soup that the Israelis sell abroad, for the navies and for the nuclear reactors, in order for them to stay alive. This is, this is insanity. So just to be very clear what's actually going on. What actually is needed by the foreigners, the Titans, is neither the radioactive elements nor the red Neros. Now, the radioactive elements are the source of the decay in their body from the get-go, and it was started because the Israelis intentionally polluted their body with these radioactive elements, and this is something that they do to humans, to Homo sapiens as well. And not only them, actually other intelligence services are also, they like it's kind of like a thing that I don't know when this was started to be like, like a trick or treat. Like, I don't know when people started to do it, but yes, they still do it. Like in the intelligence services of this world, it's still kind of like, one of the dirty yet acceptable tricks is that like to poison like a target with radioactive elements. It's fun stuff, funny things that humans do. Boys will be boys. I do not judge them. I just say that they do it to humans as well, but they also did it to Titans, and the effect is the effect is deformities in the body and eventually death. Now the red Neros, but much more so the yellow Neros, my own Neros, are a cure against it. That's why I'm not affected by the radioactive. Like recently, I have to stop because my daughters are calling me. So I'll continue in a bit.